Hi everyone, good morning. I'm going to go ahead and start the session already. So thank you so much for joining us today to our landlord engagement. My name is Natalie Manzanares. I am the Housing Program Coordinator. And I'll go ahead and have Ryan introduce himself.
My name is Ryan Patlan. I'm a Program Coordinator with the City of McAllen.
So again, thank you so much for joining us. In my 5 years working with the city, we have managed various forms of rental assistance, but I've seen the need to engage landlords. I know we're typically not the traditional ones to carry out these programs. Typically it's done through the McAllen Housing Authority, through Salvation Army, through Catholic Charities, and for those reasons, I feel like it would be a great opportunity for us to network and start establishing those partnerships. So please bear with me. We did notice that the lighting of the projector may be much lighter and harder on the eyes. So if you feel like you want a copy of these PowerPoint presentations, we're more than happy to go ahead and share those with you as well. So for this landlord engagement, we have 2 upcoming rental assistance programs, and they will vary based on the grant. So here, the program overview and the purpose is, we want to ensure that you all are provided the necessary guidance and are informed of the requirements of these 2 rental assistance programs that we have. These funding sources are federal, so we do have to be compliant with certain things, which include the lead-based inspections for any units that are built before 1978. It does also require that we go out and inspect the unit, and the unit must pass the HQS inspection form. And then we also want to kind of discuss the landlord participation. What are you all going to be required as a landlord to present? And a few things of that include W-9s, 1295 forms. Again, without the participation of the landlord, it makes it very difficult to have successful rental assistance programs, because at the end, the tenant themselves can qualify, but if the landlord is unable to participate, then the tenant is ineligible to receive the assistance. What is the purpose of a tenant-based rental assistance? This is probably the fastest way to be able to provide affordable housing to struggling families who unfortunately may find themselves in the position where they don't necessarily have the funds, or they've lost a job. So with the rental assistance, we can go ahead and assist them up to 12 months. There are certain criteria that need to be met, which will be further discussed in the presentation. But through rental assistance, we can also help promote businesses. At the end of the day, that's what you all are running at the same time. It's a business, right? You all want to be guaranteed that you all are going to be receiving payments in an adequate time. So eligible population, this is very key for our programs, and all of these funding sources have different requirements. So the 2 different programs that we're going to be discussing are what we call HOME, which is a traditional program, and HOME ARP. HOME ARP stands for American Rescue Plan, and that was a fund of source that happened as a result of COVID-19. So with traditional HOME, if you have any tenants that are cannot exceed the 60% income limit, so a person of 1, their income cannot exceed $33,360, and a family of 4, their income cannot exceed $47,640. That's for HOME. For the HOME ARP, their income cannot exceed 30%. So a person of 1 cannot make more than $16,700. So when we start accepting applicants, we're going to have to streamline to see exactly which pot of funding will better fit their need and which they would qualify based on their income requirement. Do you all have any questions? So the financial assistance, both of these programs will be able to assist with rental assistance up to 12 months and the deposit as well. What's going to vary and change in terms of what we'll be able to provide assistance for is that for HOME, I'm not sure if you all have worked with any Section 8, but what Section 8 typically does is that they subsidize the rent, meaning that they don't pay for the full rent. What the tenant will be required to pay is minimum $10, but no more than 30% of their income. So they would still be required to pay a portion of the rent. Now, if they were to qualify under our HOME ARP program, they would qualify for 100% of the rent for the 12 months of assistance. So those are the 2 differences between those programs. Do we have any questions on that? Program standards. This is really where, even though they may meet the income criteria, if the unit itself exceeds the fair market rent, the unit is ineligible to receive. So for a one-bedroom, the rent cannot exceed $798. Then the unit would be ineligible. A two-bedroom is $992, and a three-bedroom is $1,290. So that is the cap that we currently have for the units. I'm not sure what your current unit prices are, but what we've done, we had a case where the landlord was willing to bring down the rent to meet the FMR, but of course with the understanding that they were going to be paid for the full year's worth of rent, because typically that's another requirement is that they do have to sign a one-year lease. So I mean, that's another thing to consider. I mean, in trying to make units available for these eligible tenants. Do we have any questions on that? Yes.
Do you have to be in that program, or is it just, the property that we have, do we have to, you see the program, or is just the way it's supposed to be set?
So as I had shared, these are federally funded. So if you've worked with any federal funds, on average, this is kind of like the ceiling for most rental assistance programs. We do have to follow this. And again, I mean, it's one of those things that I understand if your rent currently may be exceeding this amount, but you could, right, just bring it down for that 1 year just to have a guaranteed 1 year's worth, right? But once the time comes and you want to renew and the funds are no longer available, I mean, then you're in your position to go ahead and increase it back to the original amount. Again, it's just to be able to provide that camaraderie, right, with the community and trying to make these funds more applicable to more people. So program standards, part of this, as I had mentioned, we are required to do an inspection. So what we'll be doing, typically the way it works is that we will be doing the intake of the applicant, we'll be streamlining them to which one they would qualify for under the home or the home ARP. And then from there, we would have to schedule an inspection with the landlord. And from there, we would go out, make sure that everything is met. Ideally, I always go out twice because typically, on average, the first inspection doesn't always pass. So I'll go ahead and reschedule. I'll go ahead and reschedule for a second inspection, and that's when it typically is we have a green light there. But we need to ensure that the unit is habitable for a person. Again, one of the things that I want to highlight is that because it is federal funding, it's very important that we also are compliant on our end as well. Do we have any questions on the program standards? Yes.
For example, the total you brought for a two-bedroom, you said 992. Does that include the bills that you?
No. So what we take care of, so that's one of the things. I with this type of program, it's strictly rental assistance, and the reason why we do that is because I'm the one that does the intake process, the entire process of everything, right? For once, with the water, we're unable to pay for it because that would be double dipping since it's within the McAllen. For the utilities, sometimes it's even harder because you need to reach someone to be able to, email a promissory note, right? But not everyone has the same electricity. So that's where it kind of varies, and that's why we just kind of narrowed it down strictly to rental assistance plus the deposit. Hello. So the landlord participation. So here, for the landlord participation, the requirements that we ask from you all is that you all sign a 1-year lease with these tenants. You will also be signing another agreement that will be between the tenant, yourself, and ourselves. That specific agreement does not supersede the lease itself. So let's say that they're not compliant. As a landlord, you are in your right to enforce whatever is stipulated in that agreement. We do require a W-9 form. So in-house, we have internal processes, and our finance department is unable to proceed without payment without the W-9 form. So it's very important that whatever address is listed there, that's where the check is going to be mailed out to. So I do want to say that if you do wish to participate in the program, do expect a delay in the first payment, which is usually the first month, and the deposit, because it does have to go through proper channels, and typically the landlord themselves won't receive the first payment until 3 to 4 weeks. But moving forward, the account will already be set up, so it's just an easy process. I already have an internal system set up, so I process the payment so that way those payments are received within the first week of the month that it's due. Another new thing that our purchasing department is also requesting is that the 1295 form be completed by all landlords as well. Again, we are not in position to just cut checks, so for those reasons, we will be mailing out those checks. So again, whatever is listed on the address on the W-9 form is where the check will be mailed out to. And then, as I shared with you, the first payment can take up to 2 to 3 weeks. Do we have any questions on that? So again, the program overviews include that we will be running 2 concurrent programs for rental assistance. As I shared with you, the 2 names of the programs is Home, which is more of a subsidized rent. It doesn't cover the full. It will cover a portion of it, and it can cover the full deposit. We have the other Home ARP, which will cover the 100% of the rent and the deposit as well. But both criteria are different based on the income qualifications. Again, this specific program does require a 1-year lease. We will have to go out and inspect the unit and make sure that it passes. Again, we will require a W-9 form and a 1295 form. And one of the biggest things is that the unit must not exceed the fair market rent. Do we have questions on that? So for those that just came in, my name is Natalie. I'm the housing program coordinator. I will be the one that will be primarily running this rental assistance program. And so what I want to kind of share with you all is just that this is a pot of funding that one was received through, and as a result of COVID-19, another is a pot of funding that is traditionally received through the city. It's just that we're now carrying out a new activity. But again, my primary role in doing this landlord engagement is because as I had shared earlier, is that I don't think that we, the city, have necessarily established strong relationship with our landlords, because this is not a role we typically take on, but I feel like it's necessary if we want to continue to offer these programs to our residents. And for those reasons, I hope that from here we can continue the communication, so that way we can kind of work around to see how we can provide this assistance to, the low-income residents in McAllen. Oh, yes. Huh?
I had a question.
Yes.
I know there's a limited amount of money, of course, like everything. Is the City of McAllen gonna prioritize the small business instead of the big corporations come and take the whole pot before we can assist?
Well, it's not necessarily. It's not like what we're doing here. It's not like we're asking for we're not doing like a NOFA or anything like that. What we're doing here is it's based more like on the tenant themselves. Like if you have your tenants, you want to refer them over to our program, then that's how it's going to work. We do have a pot of funding. You know what I mean? It's not a small pot of funding. And for those reasons, that's why we feel comfortable approaching most landlords, so that way they are aware. And like I said, realistically speaking, times are a bit difficult, you know what I mean? Things are only increasing, and there are struggling families out there as well. Yes?
Are there any criteria for the tenants to apply?
So the tenants, the way they would qualify, so I think what maybe I didn't really touch on is that ourselves as a city, we don't have any pre-qualifications. The only thing that I will say is that because we are a government entity, we are required to ensure that they have proper U.S. identifications. So that's one of the things. But aside from us requiring employment, that's not something that's required. We don't check their criminal background as well. I understand that that's another phase and sometimes a barrier to most, because sometimes based on what I've seen is that most of the pre-qualifications do require that they make twice of what the rent would be, So I understand that those are things that you guys impose, but again, those are more like the qualifications, because for this specific pool of tenants, they will be based on income. So we will be running out 2 different programs, and of those programs, they vary based on income. So I can go back here, so you more or less, and I hope you're able to see. So the home ARP, the maximum that the tenant can make is 30%. I know it's a bit hard on the eyes. So a person cannot make more than $16,700, and then for home, the individual cannot make more than 60%. But just to kind of clarify and kind of reiterate, the home grant, that assistance cannot That's more of a subsidized rent. That doesn't cover 100% versus the home ARP one, which would be able to cover the 100% of rent for the 12 months, because that's one of the things. We will be able to cover the 12 months plus a security deposit as well. Yes.
Person, you're talking about children also, right? Their children and the adults, everybody in the home.
Yes, it's a household, yes.
So when is this program going to run?
So this program starts next week, Tuesday, so I'll be accepting applications Tuesdays and Thursdays here at the center from 9 to 12, and then in the afternoon from 1 to 4. And then from there, because I have to be realistic with the time and what we have to go ahead and what it takes, right, to be actually able to approve the applicants for this. So ideally, like I said, the program will start next month and it will run all the way to August. So we're hoping that this program cannot be successful without the landlord participation, which is why we felt the need to go ahead and have this meeting to engage landlords, and that way you also could have a point of contact at the city in terms of like housing needs. Yes.
But if I have several apartments that are vacant, do you have people on your database that are needing an apartment that you can already allocate on live rentals, on live vacants?
So I have developed the database because since, as I had mentioned earlier, is that the city has run out different rental assistance program, and the criteria has just varied based on the funding source. And so with that specific database, I typically try to collect the name and the telephone number. So I'm more than happy to reach out to those individuals that were needing assistance. Now, I can't guarantee that they need it today, but that way maybe we could possibly refer. And if so long they meet the criteria on either one grant, then that's another way that we can kind of help each other with the referral process.
Can we ask a question?
Yes.
So that would be the ones that would come and apply for the help, right? Whatever assistance they would need,
Yes.
not us as owners.
Well, in a way, I mean, yes, as owners, if you know that your tenant is right, but of course they would have to meet our criteria as well. And the unit itself must be within the fair market rent. So that was another thing that I know we've done in the past, is that the need is evident, and so in order to qualify it, and if you all are in agreement, you all could decrease, right, with the guarantee that they will be assisted for the 12 months. Decrease the rent, so that way it falls within the fair market rent. So in the entire process, based on the timeline and based on the additional steps that we have to take on our end, I foresee this from the intake, depending on how quick they can bring in our documents, to when we can actually do the inspection, pass the inspection. The process itself may take up to 2 to 3 weeks, just depending on how soon they can primarily bring in the documentation, if the individual does qualify for the program.
Do you want to go over fair market rent, like what it is for the people that joined applications?
Yes.
That's one of the most important qualifications.
So I think Ryan has handed out the fair market rent. So this is what we have to follow. So aside from the unit falling within the fair market rent, I also have to conduct what's called a rent reasonableness. So I also have to go on the web, check the surrounding units to make sure that the rent itself is not outside, right? And it's just reasonable, and it's reasonably priced for the tenant. So again, those are little various things that I have to do on my end. But for the fair market rent, this is just something that is imposed through, I think, across the line for any rental assistance program. I didn't think I shared, but these are federally funded, and we're funded through the Housing and Urban Development, which we refer to as HUD. Has anyone worked or have they partnered with any government agency or any housing authority in the past? Any hands? Okay. So for those that have, I mean, you are aware that working with federal funding does require a little bit more compliance on our end. Do we have any more questions or anything you prefer for me to clarify? I will be emailing you, so as long as you shared your email to me, I will be sending it out. Again, I think when we were here, we realized that the projector light was too light, and it makes it very difficult to visibly see and understand. do we have any more questions?
So coming back to when I asked the timeframe, so you're gonna start next month?
So we actually, yes, we're starting next week.
How long is it gonna run?
So right now we have an end date of August 28th.
Okay, that's the only time you accept applications till that time?
We're gonna go ahead and see if we can go to him further and extend, but as of right now, based on that, because with rental assistance and based with my experience too, rental assistance is something that is fast. It's fast paced, and we're just kind of seeing it. If we will extend it, I think it would be fair enough to inform you all ahead of time, so that way maybe you guys can continue to send over potential tenants.
Is it the beginning of August or the end of August?
End of August. Yes, and like I'm sharing with you all, because of when the funds are set to expire to when we can still provide the 12 months of assistance. So this is strictly for, so these funds are strictly for McAllen residents and McAllen units. Do we have more questions on that?
Yeah, if you send to somebody and you notice that they have a very checkered past, you reject them.
I mean, we understand, and that's one of the things that I think I had to kind of understand myself, is that as much as I would want to engage landlords, I also have to be realistic that not all programs are for everyone too. And I understand if you hold your reservations to not want to participate, but of course, this is just part of the education process, right? To kind of see this is a program that fits your need and the tenant needs as well. Any questions?
What does the tenant get the form?
What was that?
The tenant, the application, do we give it to them?
No, so as far as the application, the way it would work is that you guys would just refer them over to us. They would pick up the application here with us. We'll kind of walk them through the steps. But this step will help. This is necessary because sometimes when a tenant comes and receives the application and then they have to hand over all these documents to the landlord, I'm sure you're kind of puzzled, right? Like, well, how do I complete this? Like, you're just unfamiliar with the process. Like, is this legit? So for these reasons, it's just important that you all are familiar with what our process will be. And if you have any questions yourselves, you're more than welcome to reach out as well. Yes?
So once they submit the application to City of McAllen, they tell us, okay, we submit the application. How long does it take before they have to, give you all the documentation, but how long does it take before we know they are approved, so we can stop showing the apartment and, we might have other potential renters, but then we're waiting on City of McAllen? Right.
So I typically like to work on these cases fast because the way I see it is that you all are still running a business and an individual is in need. But primarily, I will be the primary one that will be evaluating and these applications, and I'll be in-house here. I know Ryan will be assisting me as well, but I also have to be realistic based on the pool of tenants that we get at the time. But I feel like I said, I think I had given a range between 2 to 3 weeks. But I feel like what we want to do is that we want to, because we have 2 concurrent programs running at the same time, we want to make sure that first they qualify for one or the other. If they don't qualify, that's something that needs to be informed to them immediately, because I would hate to have them string them along for them not to necessarily get the assistance, and then it stops you from, again, providing a business. Yes.
But also to answer part of your question, this is not just for new tenants. People who are already in your apartments can also apply. So for those ones, the process wouldn't just be, having them waiting along. It'd just be a matter of whether they start getting the rent paid by us or they still have to pay it on their own.
Okay, so let's say like I have a renter and they're having trouble, financial trouble. Does the lease, is it going to renew at that time for 1 extra year? Like, let's say they only have 8 months going on their lease, but because you're going to get the assistance, then we have to do a new contract for another year?
No. So like, for instance, typically like for, depending on the situation, we would probably just pay out whatever the remaining lease. But again, with the fact that it is already a 1-year lease signed. So we could just pay the remaining months out. is ideally this program can take up to 12, can assist with 12 months.
And what are the requirements? What is it that you go inspect? What is it that we need to have here?
So one of the, we need to have a fire extinguisher, we need to have a smoke detector, we need to, smoke detector, an AC unit, like, thermostat. We want to make sure that obviously, like, when we open kitchen cabinets and things like that, we don't find anything there, that it's clean, that it's sanitary. We also, one of the things is that if for any units that are built before 1978, we do have to conduct the lead-based inspection. So typically those are passed because a lot of the times a lot of the times these units are usually already remodeled, right? But ideally they were still originally constructed back then. So we still are required to conduct that. But those are primarily the things that we are looking for to be able to pass that inspection. Obviously no broken windows, things like that. Mm-hmm. Do you all have any further questions? Yes, go ahead.
If a tenant, their income was higher than the standard, but they lost their source of income, and they apply?
So the way we consider is what is your income at the time of applying? Even though they maybe a month ago but at the time of application, if they no longer have any funding, that's what we're going to go ahead and consider.
Now, if the rate that they are currently at is a little bit higher than that one, can they make up for the difference?
No. That's one of the things that unfortunately we do have to abide by, the fair market rent. Again, the unit would be ineligible. So with these programs, because they're federally funded, they're very specific. And so as I shared with you all, this is something that's kind of standard across the board when we're providing a rental assistance that is funded through the Housing and Urban Development. So this specific fair market will annually be increased, but if the unit exceeds that amount, that unit is ineligible. So as I had mentioned before, if you all see that the tenant is struggling and you just see that they're trying, right? You could decrease the rent for that period of time, but obviously once that assistance ends, you all are right to go ahead and increase it back to the original amount. Do we have any more questions? I'm also available afterwards to kind of have one-on-ones too.
Is this program seasonal, or does it happen year-round, or now?
So with this specific program, so just to kind of share with you, so I've worked with different rental assistance programs. I worked when the time of COVID, it was COVID money, right? So it had to meet a COVID requirement. Last summer, I ran a rapid rehousing program, which is a program primarily to assist homeless individuals. So that specific rental assistance, the person, in order to qualify them, they had to be homeless, right? So now we're doing this, right, this program. The way we're going to do it and the way we're carrying it out is that we're currently just offering it over from the end of May all the way to the end of August. And then from there, because like I shared with you all, it's not a small pot of funding. It is, but if we were to assist for 12 months, that can make a big dent to that pot as well. So we're just kind of seeing to see how successful the program is. But again, the successful rate also is dependent on you all's participation. Yes?
On the deposit, let's say we will require a deposit. Once they leave, how do we go about it? They say, well, no, I think they need to leave because they did damage, so do we turn it back to you automatically?
So in the past, we haven't necessarily received the deposit back. I don't know, and that may be in part because of the type of funding that we're using. For this specific one, I'm not sure we're going to carry it out the same way. And in the past, they've kept the deposit. It's not an issue, it really isn't, but that's something that I just need to, I don't think we'll be receiving that back. Because once the assistance ends, and if we get it back, then what our goal is ultimately is to make sure that we provide this assistance and at the same time are depleting funds too. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure you guys are checking, like, every now and then, like, how if they're income has changed, or it's just for the whole year, no matter what?
Yes, so the way it works is that it's an annual, it's a one-time income.
So even if they didn't have a job at the time when they applied, and then now I got a job 3 months later and I'm making more than that than what's required to qualify, it's still going to be for the whole year?
Yes. Because again, what we're considering is at the time of the application, what was their income at that time. And then based on their income, it's one of those things that either, but it's one of those things that we have to just see it and in terms of which program they would qualify for the one that's going to subsidize the rent or the one that's going to cover the full rent.
And that's where market values, are those being defined here, or?
No, this is from our federally funded, so that's through the Housing and Urban Development. I know that, and I say this because I know that this is one of the biggest barriers that we have, because I've seen it myself in terms of like the rent, what the prices are. I'll say this, when we carried out a previous program, most people that were needing the assistance were already senior citizens, and for those reasons they're already on the fixed income. And so when you're fixed income, it's hard to find affordable housing. And so we understand that sometimes these prices, even though they may be relatively low, the reality is that the cost of these rents are much higher, right? So it's just one of those things that, of course, I mean, if you're willing to work with us, even if it's just one unit per se, right? Not your all the units and make them like decrease it, because at the end of the day, I'm understanding this is a business, right? So if you all are willing to at least with one unit, that would also be helpful as well. And as Brian had shared, this is not only for new tenants, it can be for current tenants as well. And the way it would work is that we need to ensure that they do have a 1-year lease signed, and we can cover the remaining months for that lease as well.
And it will be a monthly payment, right? Or do you pay in advance?
No, so the way it works is that what I had discussed earlier is that the only thing that I ask is for patience is that the first payment will include typically the first month plus the deposit, but depending also on where we're at in the application and we already see that the month is already going to approach, I'll just send out that payment at the same time. You know what I mean? Why wait? I'd rather just get it out of the way. But the payment to process, at least the initial one, will take on average about 2 to 3 weeks. But from that point forward, I will already have like a system in place. That way I could already process them before the month ends, and you all will be receiving those checks within the first week of the month that it's due.
So we have 2-bedroom units, right?
Yes.
Let's say we have a tenant, but it's a one person, but like, would they still qualify? Or it's not, how housing sometimes says, like,
Yeah.
since you're single, like you can only get a 1-bedroom.
Yes, and that is also one of the things that can be a hurdle, because we do require that they be housed in the appropriate size unit. So for a person of 1, they would have to be in a 1. But it makes it difficult for like, a mother of 5, right, that's single, that has to get a much larger size room, because then if you can see, they exceed over 1,000, right? So it's like, it's one of those things that it's like, well, I can't afford that, but it's a requirement for the program. So it's one of those things that we do have to follow. So that's one of the things that we have to consider. Whatever the family size is, they have to be in the appropriate size unit as well.
See, for example, for a 2-bedroom,
Yes.
how many people?
For a 2-bedroom, it also depends on the ages as well. So like, for instance, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, a 2-bedroom would be fine, because it would be like the parent in one and then the younger kids in both.
Let's say maximum 4 people.
Yes.
Would we get all this information, like as far as the ages and like?
Yes, of course. Yes, that's my intention. After this, I want to be a little bit more specific, so the email may be a little bit long, but I feel like that would kind of help clarify anything that maybe didn't get answered, or you just wanted to have like that kind of confirmation, right? That this is how the program how the program is going to be run. And I will also be sharing the slideshow with you. Also, please make sure that you do, write down your email address so that way I could go ahead and forward that to you all. So I'll be sending it no later than tomorrow morning because I do have another session scheduled for this afternoon as well. Do we have any additional questions? Well, again, my name is Natalie Manzanares. I am the Housing Program Coordinator. Any questions you all have, please feel free to reach out. And I understand, again, our intention is to carry out this program next Tuesday. It will be here next Tuesday and next Thursday from 9 to 12, and in the afternoon from 1 to 4, accepting applications. So if you feel that you see a struggling tenant already, refer them over our way to that way we can see if they qualify for either or program.
Ellie, I also want to recognize our newest elected commissioner, Commissioner Rios, who is in this district as well.
Oh,
Thank you so much for joining us.
thank you for joining us.
Would everything be online, like the tenants, can they submit like all their documents and everything? They have to go to,
Yes, it's going to be a hard copy application process.
So
Yes.
I got here so late. As a landlord, can I bring the papers here and you'll find somebody for me or no?
I mean, it depends on really like the tenant because, again, I think that's one of the things that we had kind of discussed. I will be reaching out to my internal database to those individuals that have reached out to me in the more recent months to see if they still require the assistance. But of course, I can't guarantee that today they will. But needless to say, I'll be reaching out to them.
So a landlord won't bring any papers here?
Typically, no.
I'm sorry, but if you have a tenant, you'll call us.
We'll go ahead and inform you. Okay. Have I worked with you before? Yes, right. I was like, with your dad, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. If we don't have any more questions, the session has ended. But thank you so much for coming in.
Y'all want to ask any
Yes.
one-on-one